we need to have certain rules. And those rules are enshrined in the original GATT 1947. And that GATT framed the rules which would govern the international trade or the cross-border trade in goods. At that time, it was not envisaged about the cross-border trade in services. For the present today, we will be confining ourselves to the cross-border trade in goods. Once the need was realized by the international community that there must be some rules and in fact harmonization of the rules governing the international trade, and the individual countries must also frame the domestic laws in line with the rules which have been made under the GATT. The GATT itself is a bundle of many agreements covering various aspects. Out of those agreements, I am going to deal with the agreement on custom valuation. Custom valuation is one of the important aspects of the multilateral agreement of GATT 1947. And there is an article called Article Roman 7 of the GATT, which defined and elaborated how the value has to be determined when the goods are being sold internationally. Initially, the 1947 GATT rules talked about custom purposes. Value should be the actual value of the imported merchandise or the like merchandise. And this slowly changed in 1950, where they brought in what is known as the Brussels definition of value, or called BDV. And this value was arrived, or at least known, as the price at which the imported goods would fetch at the time when the duty becomes payable on a sale in open market between buyers and the sellers who are independent of each other. This Brussels definition therefore brought in an imaginary value as to what would be the value price it can fetch in the open market. It is not necessary what is the actual transaction value between two entities, the exporter and importer. But if the Indian customs authorities can find that some other goods, same goods, have been imported by somebody else at a higher price, they would immediately go and say, hey, these goods can fetch these higher prices. Why not I charge you custom duty on it? This was the prevalent in 1950, and obviously it created a whole lot of problems all over the world. So as part of Tokyo Round, the GATT Valuation Code, Article 7, underwent a change. For the first time, they brought in that instead of this Brussels definition of value, it should be now transaction value. The transaction value is the price actually paid or payable for the goods when sold for export to the country of importation. So therefore, the imaginary price or the price it will fetch in the open market are discarded, and the actual transaction value between the exporter and importer was taken as the basis for determining the custom valuation. This is part of Tokyo Round of GATT. Then came Uruguay Round. In 1994, India signed it. And here, the transaction value concept has been continued. There is no change in that. They replace the GATT valuation code and retain the transaction value under this WTO. And that is the what rules we are now implementing and interpreting. So internationally, almost all the countries who are members of the GATT are now the WTO members. They've all adopted this uniform valuation of goods for importation or for exportation. Before I get into the evolution of the valuation in India, I wanted to mention that as far as the valuation of the goods are concerned, countries like India, we adopted the price which is price prevalent or available at the time of importation at the port of importation. In other words, FOB price plus cost of insurance and freight were also to be included. That is, all the costs and values are poured into the product or the merchandise till the goods reach the customs port for clearance, all to be included. That is the India has taken a position. Some countries felt that we should not be adding the freight and insurance. It is enough if we charge custom duty on the FOB value, because they feel that adding the cost of freight and insurance would give an unfair advantage to the countries which are nearer to them and disadvantage to the countries which are far away, because the freight charges will increase. And therefore, some countries adopted the FOB value as the basis. As far as India is concerned, it has chosen that we will charge custom duty on a value which is the value at the time of importation and at the place of importation. Having said this basic difference between them, and both are compatible under the WTO. Okay, WTO gives the freedom to the countries to adopt any one of those methods. There is no violation of the GATT code because of this. Now, as far as India is concerned, we had the old Sea Customs Act, 1878. At that time, Section 30 talked about what is known as real value. The real value being the wholesale cash price, less trade discount, for which the goods of like kind and quality are sold or capable of being sold. Of course, at the time and place of importation. So at the time and place of importation was there from 1878 as far as India is concerned. We have not changed that. So therefore, the real value was basically the wholesale cash price less the trade discount, for which of the like kind of quality are sold or capable of being sold. So capable of being sold here resonates with the price it can fetch under the BDV, and that is what ultimately was being used. In 1962, when the Indian Customs Act was recast, the valuation definition of actual value, as mentioned, was adopted. When India was signing that agreement, they had their own reservations. But in 1988, India decided that we will also adopt the custom valuation rules under the GATT as the basis here. And therefore, India also adopted what is known as the transaction value methodology for arriving at the valuation and discarding the age-old BDV definition of value. So for 1988, Indian customs are in line with the international community, international practices. In arriving at the value, you go by the actual transaction value between the exporter and the importer. These rules have been slightly revised in 2007. Some minor adjustments been made, but majority of the spirit has been maintained in the 2007 rules also. And therefore, what we have today as a custom valuation is the transaction value concept at the time and place of importation. Now, I must make one submission to all of you. This session which I'm going to give from now onwards would be slightly at higher level. I'm going to assume certain fundamental knowledge on the valuations for the customs from all of you, because the audience is enlightened audience. They are all practitioners. When I am going to discuss with you, I am not going to start with what the transaction value mean, definition, blah, 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 etc. It will be insult to your integrity, your intelligence. So therefore, I have decided to take up certain issues which are controversial, for which there are no definite answers. The area of jurisprudence is totally barren, completely virgin field, or there are already decisions which are apparently wrong, or at least require reconsiderations. So those are the things which I thought I will take up today. With your permission, let me now take up those difficult terrains in the custom valuation, which all of us will grapple one day or other. Now, before going to section 14 of the Customs Act 1962, I must remind all of us about section 12, which talks about levy of duty of customs at the rate specified in the first schedule of the Custom Tariff Act on the goods imported into or exported from India. So therefore, the levy of duty of customs under section 12 is on goods. Why? Because the Custom Act deals with goods importation or goods exportation. It does not deal with service import or service exports. And all of us know the entire tariff from chapter 1 to chapter 98 and 99 deal with goods, goods, goods. Then what is that I'm going to talk to you about this new areas of disputes which arise or which will arise in the future as far as the custom valuation is concerned. The first thing is, are we clear that what is goods? Are we clear that the item in question, for want of better words, I'm using the item, is it to be categorized as goods or services or none? Is the area of difference between the goods and services is clearly demarcated or not? And where there is a gray area and where the customs want to assume or give a color to a pure service as goods, the problem starts. So we are going to discuss about that gray area where the customs, I know, for example, IGST and GST will be dealing with those items, whether they are to be treated as goods or services. There will be one part of my session today will be dealing with that area where there is no clear demarcation between goods and services. The second one, which I'm going to talk about, is the advancement of technology. The advancement of technology is now going to bring in newer concepts, newer goods, and newer way of importing goods and utilizing these goods. And these newer technologies, which are bringing in different types of goods into the market, the authors of the valuation code in GATT were not aware, because in those days, these types of technologies were not available. And therefore, here is a case where technology has overtaken the legislation. And we are trying to apply the existing law to the evolving technological product. And we find extremely difficult. It is like putting the square peg in a round hole. And that will be the second leg of my treatment of today's session. And if you still have time beyond that, I may deal with some other subjects. If I do these two, I think I'm doing my job. I'll do justification to my job when you have invited me to talk. Now, we'll talk about the concept, whether the goods and services, are they clearly demarcated or not? We have various issues like intangible items, like a trademark, a copyright, or a patent, or a know-how, a know-why, know-what. All those items are intangibles, but they have tremendous value. These intangibles themselves become goods or not. If a person was buying a trademark by way of assignment, will it be treated as a trading in goods or trading in services? It's a big question. And if this happens cross-border, then what happens? The question is, as far as the customs are taking a position that if these intangibles are incorporated in a document or a media, and if the media passes through the customs post, we will charge the entire thing as goods. These intangibles are already, I would say, encrypted or written on a document or a media, electronic or otherwise. And when this item passes through the customs are able to see a disk, a CD, or a DVD, or a pen drive. So physical goods are moving. Because the physical goods are moving, I want to charge the custom duty on this item. And then the custom officer asks, what is the value of the CD? The importer says the value of the CD is $2. Okay. Is it a blank CD or it is recorded CD? The importer says it is recorded CD. It is recorded with what? It is recorded with a highly sophisticated telecom software. How much you paid for it? I paid $30 million for the software. The custom officer says, this $30 million software is recorded on a $2 disk, and you're importing it. And I know what is the classification of the disk. It is 8523 now, early 8524. And rate of duty applicable, say 15%. You are asking me to pay or collect custom duty on 15% of $2, which is not correct, because you have paid $30 million plus $2, or the $2 is free. So I want to charge custom duty on the entire value of the software which are recorded in the media. And that's what I want to do. Now, as far as the Committee on Custom Valuation under the WTO, what did they do? They said that given the unique situation with regard to the data or instructions, namely software, recorded on the carrier medium for data processing equipment, and that parties have sought a different approach, it would be consistent with agreement for those parties who wish to do this, adopt the following practice. Namely, in determining the custom value of the imported carrier media bearing the data or instruction, namely the software, only the cost or the value of the carrier medium itself shall be taken into account. For custom purposes, you don't take into account the software value and don't charge custom duty on the entire thing. If any administration, custom administration does this, it is in line with the custom valuation code. There is no violation whatsoever. Now, I am bringing it to the notice in the beginning itself now. Why? Because how India treated these intangibles is an interesting question. In this example which I am now talking about, now, if that CD, we call the CD is A, the blank CD is called A, another blank CD I'm going to bring B, another one is C. Now, I have paid $30 million for the software and it is recorded in the CDA, and the custom officer says, oh, this CDA value will be 30 million plus $2. You pay the custom duty on it. Grudgingly, I say I must pay because I want the software to be out. I am talking about a situation where the software was not being downloaded in those days. Now, software can be downloaded. What is the problem? We'll see later separately. Now, the question is, second, now, as far as the telecom operator is concerned here, say Airtel or Vodafone or somebody, they required about 30 such CDs because they had to be used in different 30 locations all over India. So 30 CDs are being imported with the software recorded in it. One value, one CDA, its value, including the software, is 30 million plus 2. Say, let us say 30 million for our discussions. What will be the value of the second, third, fourth, fifth? If you go by, and there is no value declared for this, then the custom officer will apply the valuation rule for identical goods. And identical goods is already valued $30 million. That is CDA. Therefore, CDB, CDC, CDD, all over, each one of them, you must pay $30 million. And he is right. Because if I am importing a pen and a declared value of pen for $5, if I import 10 pens, each of the pen will be assessed at $5 plus $5 plus $5 plus. So therefore, each of those goods being identical goods will be assessed at the same value at which it was paid. However, the payment made over $30 million, it was not 30 million into 30 times. No, it was not paid like this. So therefore, the software value 30 million need to be necessarily amortized with regard to so many paid. The CD is going to come, and it is not correct to charge the entire value of $30 million on the first CD. But actually, I do not know how many CDs I need to import. I do not know. Today, I will require 30. If my demand increases, if I had to go for every village level or a district level, I may have 300 CDs later. And therefore, I may be compelled to import more. Then how do you amortize this value of the software, if the software value is to be included? While this is the subject, as far as the service tax authorities, as also now the GST authorities, they say, hey, mister, you have imported this CD, correct? You have imported also the recorded CD, correct? You paid $30 million for what? $30 million I paid for the license to use the telecom software which is owned by some companies, Nokia or Ericsson or somebody, or AT&T. So now you have imported the right to use licensed software. According to me, it is a service. You jolly well pay me the service tax or the GST on it. I don't care whether you paid the custom duty including its value or not. We are not concerned about it because it is indeed a service. And if you look at my GST tariffs, there is a tariff for the services, and that too it talks very clearly about the right to use the software or in any IPR, etc., is taxable here, and as GST is payable, is payable. So now I'm not talking about the CVD portion. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about purely the custom duty itself. Now this problem actually arose long time back, way back in 2001, when a judgment was delivered by Honorable Supreme Court in the case ACC Cements. That judgment was dealing with a case where the importers were manufacturers, or in this case a cement company or cement. For the manufacturer of cement, they wanted to have a cement plant to be imported or to be used. The layout drawings of this entire plant had to be imported so that the plant can be erected by the engineers. And the know-how provider of this particular technology, he also gave the drawings for the layout of the factories. It also gave how these machines function, what temperature I have to maintain, where the kiln will be there, how the clinker will be made. All those details have been given, which is called know-how. It also included the people to come over here for training, our people going there for training, all those things. All those things put together, a price was charged, say about $20 million. And the drawings of the layout was actually drawn on papers or printed on papers. And those printed documents came, or printed papers came in. The printed documents, obviously at that time, was classifiable in Chapter 48, attracting some duties, 10% of the time, right, if I remember correct. The custom officer said that you must pay the duty on the entire value of the know-how value plus this, plus this, plus the paper value. Whereas the value declared was paper plus the cost of printing the drawing onto the paper. The matter went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court interpreted the provisions, especially Section 2 and subsection 22 of the Customs Act. And they said that any movable article which comes as a part of a baggage or imported to the country by any other manner for the purpose of the Customs Act, the provisions of Section 12 will be attracted. Any media, whether in the form of books or computer disks or cassettes, which contain information technology or ideas, would necessarily be regarded as goods under the aforesaid provision of the Customs Act. These are movable goods, exigible to tax under Section 12 and by Section 2. And they didn't stop with that. They further said that, look at this situation. Suppose they, in fact, they give an example. For example, if paintings are to be taxed, valuable painting worth millions, a painting or a portrait may be specifically or specially commissioned, or an article may be tailor-made. This aspect is irrelevant. So what is taxed is the final product as defined, and it will be an absurdity to contend that the value for the purpose of duty ought to be the cost of canvas and the oil paint, even though the composite product, the painting, is worth millions of dollars. So therefore, the Honorable Supreme Court held that in this case, the cost of the painting, the painter's effort in putting the paint or a portrait will also be included in the value of the goods, and accordingly the custom duty to be paid. But what we learned in our school days, law school days, is that if I buy a painting, the value will be something. But if I commission a person to make a portrait of, say, a mountain or myself, I am actually commissioning him for a service. And what I pay him the service charges or painting charges, the finished product is in the form of a painting. So the question here is, as far as the second situation is concerned, I am actually importing a service. Question therefore is, in a situation of this nature, in order to avoid the duplication of the value being included for the custom purposes as also for the GST purposes, I think a time has come to call a spade a spade. I think we are lawyers, we are also responsible for these type of judgments. We need to present to the court the holistic picture. Where exactly the software fit in? What is the role of this painting here? What is the international practice here? How does this GST or the service tax deal with this type of subjects? If they are treated as a service, could we also say it is also to be considered as a goods? Just because it got recorded in the medium, does it mean that the custom valuation should include the value of this cost of painting, etc., or the cost of software? I think it is our duty to present to the court the holistic picture and also show the international practices of the impossibility of the taxing this software as part of the goods. It is better that it is charged as services rather than as goods. The fact that it is being incorporated in a medium would make no difference. The pith and substance of the transaction is a service. Namely, I am buying so many licenses for the use of this particular software in my telecom equipment. So the ownership of this software is still with the exporter. I am merely getting the right to use. For getting the right to use, I am making the payment, and that payment is for the services and not for the goods. If this is presented properly, probably at some point of time, the AC agreement may come for consideration again before the Supreme Court. And therefore, we need to necessarily bring about this the distinction and where we should be able to draw a line where the GST legislation, they have overcome this problem slightly differently. They have defined services or those are not goods. So therefore decide the goods, and then later on we can decide what is services. But such a thing is not existing as far as the customs law is concerned. And therefore we are having this particular problem. Now, having said this, I would like to complicate the matter more. I think all of you know, or at least they think that I am a complicated person. But I'm a simple person, actually. I simplify things. But I'll give a little complicated example. Let's say a company in India, say Tata Motors, they have certain employees and then they want to import a software or right to use the software. And the software is being imported. It is recorded in a medium and it is coming. Tata Motors enter into an agreement after negotiations, say with Microsoft or Oracle, saying that they have 5,000 employees and therefore they require 5,000 licenses. The 5,000 licenses were negotiated and the licenses, money is unpaid. The cost of it, say, about $10 million. So that is being recorded in the medium, and the medium comes in, and the custom officer says, "Sir, you must pay $10 million grudgingly." Tata Motors makes the payment of custom duties. The service tax person says, sir, you must pay the service tax also on this transaction because licenses are 5,000. Is the right to use. According to my tariff, it is service, you must pay the tax. Tata Motors pays that also and takes the credit of that. I suppose they can take the credit, but there can be situation where you can't take the credit also. We'll come back later. Now, 3 years go, 5 years go, 10 years go. Tata Motors have flourished. Their volumes went up. The car sales and truck sales went up, added newer dimension to their manufacturing and services. They increased the workforce, the employees, from 5,000 to 15,000. And one day the IT department audit told the Tata management, hey, you are having only 5,000 licenses. You need to have additional 10,000 licenses because you're using 15,000. Tata Motors being a law-abiding company, we forgot. They went back to Microsoft and said, sir, we need 10,000 more licenses. And they negotiated. And Microsoft says, you came voluntarily, good boy. I will charge you 15,000 or $15 million. Fine. As far as the additional licenses are concerned, I don't have to import another CD. Not necessary because the original CD is already in my server. All I need to have licenses. I have now paid for the licenses. Microsoft is happy. I am happy. Now comes the custom audit. The custom audit says, hey, you paid custom duty on the first time at 5,000 licenses at 10 million. I never knew that you got additional license for 10,000 and you paid for it. You originally agreed that you will include the value of the software licenses in the CD. When you got additional licenses, you did not come back to me and say, sir, I want to pay you remaining amount of $15 million custom duty on it. And therefore, you have cheated the government. I am going to charge you for this. But Tata Motors, when they got this extra 10,000 licenses, they promptly paid the service tax to the service tax department because they import of services. They paid the tax, they could take the credit. They thought they complied with the law, also complied with the licensing conditions. Now the question here is whether the action of the department, a custom department, asking the Tata Motors to ask them to make payment for the differential custom duty of remaining 10,000 licenses, correct or not. Now let us look at from two different angles. Suppose I imported a tangible goods, say a truck, a dump truck, and I declared a value for this particular truck, say $50,000. And there is a price escalation clause for this. And the price escalation clause applied after 3 years, there is negotiation done after 3 years later. Price agreed between the parties is not 50,000, it is say 70,000. And the importer makes the payment of remaining $20,000 for the dump truck. Then he is duty bound to go back to the customs and pay the differential duty of $20,000 because the value actually is 70, even though at the time of importation it was say $50,000, subject to price escalation clause. Therefore, the price was a tentative price, and therefore the remaining amount also has to be paid. Now, apply that particular principle to the software import. At the time of importation, I imported. I had 5,000 license in my mind. At that time, I never knew that I'm going to expand. I negotiated. I paid on $10,000. 7 years down the line, I required more licenses. And therefore, I paid under $50,000. Will the analogy of dump truck apply here or not? The question. There are no definite answers. Whatever questions I am posing, there are no definite answers. Whether this will be still considered as the value addition of the original import, or you will interpret section 14 transaction value as the price at which the goods are sold or imported at the time and place of importation. At the time and place of importation, the value was $10,000, nothing more, nothing less. There was no contemplation between the parties, exporter and importer, that the price will be escalated later on. A contingency which nobody thought of. A contingency arose 5-6 hours later, saying that the value will go up. Again, after 10 years, Tata Motors require another 10,000 licenses. Can this original assessment of bill of entry of $10,000 or 5,000 licenses be kept pending as provisional forever? Can there be an assessment which can keep the value of the goods as provisional forever? What are the basic principles of tenets of taxation? Definiteness is one of the basic canons of taxation. The importer should know how much I should pay for this import of this merchandise. This is the rate, this is the value, here it is, pay and go. Only when there is a dispute regarding the chemical composition or some market inquiry, etc., you can keep it provisional, and the provision also should be for a definite period of time, and you should finalize it 3 months, 6 months, etc. You can't keep the assessment provisional forever, for decades, because it is a possibility that you may import, get some more licenses. So therefore, the answers to these type of questions are complicated, and the jurisprudence is still lacking in the type of situations. And how the courts will determine the course of interpretation in the future is anybody's guess. It is quite possible if it goes before Judge A, you may decide on a particular manner, and the Judge B another way, or both are right, or both are wrong. Now, we are now getting into these types of questions where the intellectual property contained in the goods or the software or in the book or cinematograph film is also being considered as goods, and then it is taxed. Now I come with a different example. There is an airline company in India, say company A, Air India or SpiceJet or Indigo or anybody. Now they have imported the aircraft, and mandatorily the engines have to be serviced after certain flying hours or flying kilometers. So after about say 20 lakh kilometers, the engines have to be serviced. And this servicing of engines is not available in India. The MROs are situated elsewhere. The engine goes from here to say Germany or France or US and serviced and brought back. Now, as far as the repaired engines have come, or service engines have come back here, what should be the treatment of this particular repaired engine? Did I import a new engine? No. I exported an engine. What came back was serviced engine. What I am paying to the exporter is service charges. And these service charges, according to Schedule 2 of the GST Act, specifically defines them as service. So therefore, this is treated as a service, and therefore IGST has to be paid as a service. But the custom officer is used to assess this as goods. And he says, whether it is repaired or not, damaged or not, service or not, I see an engine before me. This engine has to be taxed. But there is a custom notification which says if the items or merchandise have gone for repair and come back, etc., you don't charge the full value, but confine the custom duty to the repair charges plus the freight inwards and freight outwards. So on this, we pay that to custom duty. Grudgingly, the custom officer assesses it at a lower value, which is basically service charges plus freight out, freight inside. But that is for the basic custom duty. Now comes IGST. Now the importer says, for IGST is concerned, sir, I will pay tax as services because what is imported is a service. The custom officer says, sorry, sir, are you out of your mind? You are paying custom duty, treating as goods for basic custom duty. For IGST, you will say it is not goods. What are you talking? I will assess them as goods only. Now, he says very clearly, why are you worried? Whether it is a service or goods, how do you concern? Whatever tax you are going to pay IGST, you can take credit. I tell the client, oh, sorry, sir, you are in trouble. The airline says, what trouble, sir? Look at your tax, output tax you have to pay when you are charging your passengers. Passengers are going back and forth from Delhi and Chennai. The lawyers are going up and down. The tax you have to pay on the transportation service of these gentlemen and ladies is 5%, provided you do not take credit of any input, namely input goods, you are not supposed to take the credit. Input services, you can take credit. Even if you take credit on input services, the tax of 5% will apply. The minute you take any input credit on goods, but 5% will not apply, it go to 18%. Now, this gentleman says, Lakshmi, I am in trouble. Now, I do not know how to handle the problem. Because if he pays the same tax as goods, then he is left with the liability of 18%. That's the end of the matter. Then afterwards, the airline cannot even survive. And the custom officer says, I will not allow the goods because I see the goods. And the man argues, the airline argues, sir, what are talking? The IGST law deems it as service. Forget about it. I have been assessing this as good for the last 30, 40 years from my grandfather's time. These types of problems do come. And the matters are being agitated, different forums. Of course, today, forums are not sitting because they are busy and they're not available. Every day, the tax are mounting. That tax which is being paid for its credit card not be taken runs to more than 500, 600 crores. It may even go beyond 1,000 crores. Viability of the airlines are under serious doubt with regard to these types of unreasonable stand taken by the department. And I would not blame the department. There is also a lack of clarity. And there are some patchwork being done, say that I'll give the exemption like this, I'll give the exemption on the good like this, etc., etc. These are all basically patchwork. But we are not addressing the basic issue. That it is possible that you can import goods which are embedded in you can import services which are embedded in goods, and still you must be able to separate the goods and services and tax them accordingly. This must come. Unless this comes, we are going to have permanent problem. Of course, as lawyers, you will always be happy to handle these type of matters, but it is not the right way of doing things. I don't know whether how long I can continue. I can continue for some more time, or my time is over.
No, sir. Sir, you can continue, sir, for however long, sir. We don't have any time restrictions, sir.
No. Don't say like that. You'll be in trouble. You will not be able to go for lunch. Huh?
No problem.
Okay.
Everyone is eager to hear you, sir.
I don't know. You are making a representation or misrepresentation. Many people are wanting to go back, and then you are saying everybody wanted to hear. So your statement may be incorrect. Be that as it may, now I come to a different subject. I mean, on this uh, goods and services portion, we can multiply the example, multiply the problems. All I need to do is to show you, like a peep show, the problem which are magnified through this lens. And there are many, many such problems. Day in and day out, we grapple with the type of problems. And I pour and burn the midnight oil to find solution to these type of things in a practical manner, in a theoretical manner, in a legal manner, etc. And I don't know in either manner. And that actually keeps all of us busy. Now we come to the second part of my session with regard to the technological developments and how the customs are, the law is silent about it. I'll give an example, which I think all of us should know, and probably I'll give a second example first. Namely, suppose a telecom switch manufacturer, a telecom equipment manufacturer, sells his equipment to a telecom operator. And telecom operator says, sir, I need this equipment for my 2G services. And these 2G services for about 10,000 lines. And the price is negotiated. Price charge for this equipment per equipment is there at, again, $10 million. And then about 30, 40 machines like this have been imported, duty is paid, everything over. 4 years down the line, the company has got a 3G license, and they are also likely to get the 4G licenses in the future. So when the 3G license has been given to them, they made all the arrangements, and then they went back to the equipment supplier. Sir, can you supply 3G equipment? I want to service my subscribers as the 3G. He says, no problem. He said, what is the value? When will your shipment made? He said, why shipment? The equipment supplied to you earlier itself can function as 3G. I have locked it earlier. I will unlock it now. I'll give a key number. All you need to do is press the key there. It will open up. The equipment will be ready for using the 3G. But for giving this equipment, the key, you must pay me $20 million. I was happy. Aha, I don't have to go through all the rigmarole of bill of entry, blah, 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 etc. The time is immediately short, etc. Immediately I concluded the contract, signed the contract, and came back. I got the key, opened, everything is fine. Now what happens is the custom valuation. Originally, I imported the goods as 2G equipment because at the time our envisaged as 3G. And the same equipment now can actually function as 3G with additional cost being the extra cost for the opening of these features in this particular equipment. Now, should the original value be revised to the present value, because now additional payment have been made, because equipment is the same. I have not, no extra thing has come, no extra thing has been out. Same thing equipment. So now your customs law today is silent because it doesn't know how to deal with the subject, because they never thought that the same product can be upgraded. When I say upgraded, I'm cautiously using the word upgraded, may not be the appropriate term. For want of better words, I'm saying upgraded. The same equipment with extra key, it unlock the a, a new dimension to this particular equipment. And in fact, when the 4G license is wanted, again, I'll have to go and ask for a key, and he gives the key and open up this. Every time you open up these particular features of this particular equipment, when I'm making the payment, I'm duty bound to make payment to them. Should the original value of the goods be revised or not? Again, the question is, the transaction value is the price at which the goods are imported at the time and place of importation. So at the time of importation, this is the price. Now, the key which has come here through my internet, there is no importation, and that cannot be the value for the original value to be revised. It's a good argument. But the customs can always say, equipment remains the same. Now you have enhanced the value. I have lost the custom duty on the enhanced value. Pay me the first bill. And since you did not declare to me, I am going to invoke the longer period. I am going to impose penalty on you. I am going to impose interest on you, etc., etc., etc. This is the reality. And we have also a judgment of the Supreme Court in India, where the price escalation takes place. The interest payable on the differential duty, is it from the original date or later date? In the excise case, it happened. I suppose all of you are aware that in the case of famous case of SAIL sold the goods to railways, and the price charge, say, about 10,000 rupees per ton. And there was escalation clause in that. There was negotiation between railways and this. Railways agreed that there was an increase in cost, and therefore 10,000 was increased to 12,000. And this escalation was agreed after 4 years or so, because the government departments, various negotiations and all. On the remaining 2,000 rupees per ton, SAIL paid the excise to differential voluntarily. Then came the department saying that you're good boy for paying the excise duty on the 2,000 differential, good boy, but what about the interest? He said, sir, I got the 2,000 escalation today only. Like a good boy, I paid immediately today itself. I never got it earlier. The excise says, no. Once you pay, agreed to pay the remaining 2,000, the price of the goods is 12,000 from the original date, 4 years before. And therefore, there was a short payment of excise duty for the last 4 years. Though you have made payment today, the 2,000 duty on 2,000 came much later, therefore you pay the interest. And 2-3 decisions were against. One matter came before the larger bench. The bench said, he may refer to larger bench. There's a genuine problem here, because the price escalation takes place today. Asking them to pay interest in the retrospectively is incorrect. But the matter was referred to larger bench because there were conflicting judgments. The larger bench decided that it is retrospective, therefore you have to pay the interest from the beginning. I'm sure the same thing will apply as far as customs are concerned. There is no problem, because there is a price escalation. Original goods remain the same. Therefore, I will not be surprised when the customs comes and says that you not only pay the differential now, and also pay the interest for the past. And for not declaring, I must also impose penalties on you. Oh, they can even confiscate the goods, misdeclaration, 111M, etc., etc. So there are the situations where the same goods with the different features can be taxed in what way, we do not know. I can bring another simpler example where I wanted to import a particular software from a company, and the software company said, no problem, sir. For the particular software, I'll charge you $100. I imported the CD containing this software. I paid the custom duty on $100 also, apart from the $1 CD value. I cleared. After about 6 months, I wanted to have 2 more softwares. I went back to the same person and said, sir, can you give me 2 more software? Why do you worry, sir? The CD which I gave you actually contained 20 software. Since you asked for one, I gave a license for one, I gave a key for one. Now you want 2 more? No problem, take it. I'll give you 2 more. And I paid. Now what happens to this 2 software and which I am now paying the differential? Should I pay different custom duty or not? It's somewhat analogous to the same thing which I was mentioning as far as the telecom equipment is concerned. So today the technology is such that you can bundle a number of features in a particular product and price the product depending upon the feature you want and unlock the other features as and when you want later. It is a technological probable, it's possible. But I think our custom valuation rules as stand today, there is lack of clarity in that. We are going to face more and more problems when we are going to tax the digital economy. And it's a vast field, potential revenues, and very high potential of disputes. Because that area is absolutely area which has not been traversed. And the appetite for the tax officers is very high. They would like to maximize the duty collections. When I have no qualms about it. But when they will cross the Lakshman Rekha and say, this is where I must go, beyond that I cannot go and I should not go, unless we have that clarity in the legislation, or the legislation is not there, at least the judgment should come and clarify what exactly it is, so that the industry and trade can function smoothly. Keeping this uncertainty is a real problem. Should I stop now or can continue for 5 more minutes?
So please, sir, you can continue, sir, for 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
While we're talking about the technological developments and then multiple features can be added to the existing equipment, we are also going to have problems in a different area with regard to the license fee to be paid for the importation of the goods in question. Drawings made in India, supplied to, or made elsewhere in the world and then supplied to the exporter. And you make payment separately to the drawings. And the exporter exports the goods minus the value of the drawings. And the custom valuation says you must include value of the drawings, which are used for the manufacture of the goods. Many times, the items that are imported are complicated goods. How to order the goods is a very important question. For ordering the good itself, I require engineering drawings. But those engineering drawings can't be used for manufacturing of the goods. It is basically like ordering drawings. To give a simple example, suppose I want to stitch a suit for myself, I have 2 choices. I can go to a shop and then look at ready-made shirts and ready-made suits. I'll pick up whether what is my size, 34, 32, 30, whatever it is, etc. What is the length of my leg and what is the chest size, etc. I pick it up and come. Maybe some light alterations. The other one is I can go to a tailor and then ask him to take measurements. He takes the measurements and then ask me to come and pick it up after about a week or 10 days. And if I am a person like Ramesh, who is very busy, he is not able to go to the tailor shop because he is very busy lawyer. So he asks somebody to come and take the measurements in his home, and then the measure document he put in a document and sent it to his famous tailor. And the tailor stitches a very nice suit for him, which he can wear in the high court to argue the cases. Now, when Ramesh gave these drawings or measurements to the tailor, what did he give? He gave the dimensions, what should be the arm length, what should be the shoulder length, what should be the chest length, what should be the length of the leg, etc., etc. This is what he gave. But he did not teach the tailor as to how to cut the shoulder, where to cut the fabric, where to stitch, what lining to be made, etc. He never said. In fact, I wish he doesn't say that because he doesn't know. So therefore, the tailor knows that. So there are enough number of drawings which I am supposed to give to the exporter to say what I want. And for making those drawings, I need to make payment to XYZ in a different country. And those drawings are sent to the exporter to manufacture the product according to my specifications. As far as the manufacturer is concerned, he can't manufacture these products based on these specification drawings. He has to sit down and make his own detailed engineering drawings. Only those drawings can be used for manufacturing the goods. Now, what the law says, drawings are used for the manufacture of the goods, for production of the goods, for which payment made separately will have to be included. But doesn't mean that the drawings are used for giving dimensions, ordering, they also to be included. Again, a gray area. What is the difference between an ordering drawing and a manufacturing drawing? When you go deeper and deeper, it is a fascinating subject. And the stakes involved are so huge. And many a times, the custom officers don't see the difference, the niceties of law, and they simply say that, no, you better pay the custom duty on the entire thing. I think I'll go on multiplying this type of problems. I think I am crossing my limit time, and I'm waiting for my learned friends to ask some questions if they want to. So I stop now at this point of time, and then I invite questions.
Thank you very much, sir. Participants, whoever wants to ask any question to sir, you can kindly raise your hand in the app or drop me a message in the chat option. Then I can put forward that question to sir, or I can unmute you and then you can ask questions to sir. And if possible, kindly turn on the video to ask the question to sir so that the communication can be more easier. Thank you. So we have one participant who wants to ask sir.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So, my name is Gaurang Shah and I'm from Thermo Fisher. And we want to do localization. That means from our commission model, we want to now get into the import and sale model. So, previously we used to sell, our factory in foreign party used to sell directly to customer at the higher price. Now he is selling me in bulk, so we get the cheaper rate. So whether custom duty on lower value will be acceptable to the custom authorities or no?
In the buy-sell model, you are going to import yourself and resell, or you are going to ask some third parties to import and sell?
Sir, not audible.
In the buy-sell model, you are the subsidiary of the foreign company, right? So the
Yeah.
subsidiary will import and resell, right?
Right.
And when you are importing the products, the value will be lower because earlier it is no longer a commission model, it is a buy-sell model.
Right.
And there is a bulk price which is going to be charged. And therefore, you are asking a question that earlier price was higher, now the price will be lower.
Right.
And therefore, with the lower price will be acceptable or not is the question, correct?
Yes. Right.
Theoretically, yes, it is possible. It is correct also because now you are an importer. And the level of trade, earlier you were an agent, now you are going to import and resell. Therefore, because you are going to import and resell, you are going to incur some importation cost, and inventory cost, etc., etc. And therefore, you are entitled to charge, get at the lower prices. Only thing is, since you become related person of the
Right.
exporter, then the
Right.
transaction value has to be properly determined therein, and to that extent, it will go to the valuation. But in principle, that in the buy-sell model, the customer cannot and should not adopt the old value. It is a new value. It may not be exactly the transaction value which you have done, but it may be a little more or a little less, as the case may be. Little less, they will not leave, they will leave you on price. But a little more, they'll ask you to pay, but they can't increase it to the original level.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Please, sir, you are on.
Yeah. Sir, Satish Sundar advocate here, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir, I just want to know what is the role of direct rate of valuation, which is being attached to the customs department in determining, fixing the values, etc., etc.
Yeah, the direct rate of value, sorry, if you're finished.
Yes, sir.
The direct rate evaluation is a direct rate created to monitor the prices of certain goods, sensitive goods, and where there is a lot of price fluctuations going on. So they indicate these are the benchmark prices at which goods are being imported. The custom officers blindly adopting that value and rejecting the value of the imported goods is incorrect. As far as the importer is concerned, if he can prove that the value declared by him is correct, there is no other consideration whatsoever. Even if it is lower than the benchmark prices given by the valuation direct rate, it is still be accepted. And third parties cannot come and say that the different price may be adopted because it will go against the transaction value. Unless the department can prove that your lower price is because of some other consideration, if you are sure that there's no other consideration, you should win the case.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Satish, sir. Sir, there is one question from one of our junior friends. His mic is not working, sir, so he just wanted me to ask the question to you, sir. But he's here. Can I just ask his question, sir?
Sure.
Yes, sir. So the WTO now has prescribed that flash sale price can be adopted for assessable value of goods. Is it in consonance with the Customs Act of India? Isn't such a highly discounted price frowned on in India? That's his question, sir.
What price is it?
Sir, I'll read it again, sir. The WTO now has prescribed that flash sale price can be adopted for assessable value of goods. Is it in consonance with the Customs Act of India? Isn't such a highly discounted price frowned on in India?
Flash price is according to him with the highly discounted price.
Yes, sir.
If the highly discounted price is being shown or charged to an importer in India, and if there is no other consideration, no relationship whatsoever, it is acceptable in India also. There is no way you can reject it. Just because it is highly discounted doesn't mean it will be rejected.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. I think he must have heard. Thank you so much. Sir, we have a question from Vishwanathan, sir. Vishwanathan,
I will not answer your questions. You know so much.
No.
This is not fair.
No, sir. You mentioned in your lecture about the online transfer of software. Is it an import, sir? Just wanted to know.
That is online downloading a software directly into the computer, not into the customs.
Yes.
According to me, it's not import of goods, therefore no custom will not be waived.
Thank you very much. That's a simple doubt.
Thank you.
And a simpler answer.
Thank you. Mr. Jeshwin?
Yeah.
Mr. Jeshwin, you can answer.
Yeah. Sir, good afternoon. This is Jeshwin from Amazon. First of all, thank you for having this session. It's very useful. I just want to ask a question. It's around the drawing which you are referring, right? So it's more of the same topic. Like there is a clause under section Rule 10 of the Customs Valuation Act, which says engineering development act, design work and plan sketches undertaken elsewhere than in India are necessary for the production of the import the goods.
Correct.
So just want to understand, like, what if these designs were made in India? Like, should we not include it in the valuation? Why it is specifically mentioned as elsewhere than in India?
As far as the custom valuation is concerned, it makes a departure, it makes a deviation, so long as the engineering drawings emanated from India, even if it is given free of cost to the exporter, and then the exported goods are coming from there, the engineering drawing charges, even if it is incurred by the importer here, is not to be included. So this is also in consonance with the WTO agreement. And the value will be included only when the drawings emanate otherwise than in India.
Okay, got it, sir. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions? Sir, I think
they're all tired and they want to go and have lunch.
No, sir, they are all very clear with the topic, sir, because of your very simplified presentation, sir. Sir, I think there are questions,
I'm
sir.
sorry, I chose some difficult examples and difficult concepts, etc. But I thought I am addressing the right audience to pose these types of unanswered questions. That is why I put the topic also as unanswered questions.
Definitely, sir. Sir, there is one more question, sir, from Mr. Abhay. Can I just unmute him, sir?
Sure, yeah.
Mr. Abhay, you can ask your question.
Good afternoon, sir. Am I audible?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Sir, can't internet be treated as a medium as has been held by the Infotech judgment of Madras High Court and then cover it under TCS? Because TCS has said that through any tangible medium, if software is sold, it will be treated as good, and then let the customer on it.
I mean, I couldn't hear you properly, sir. Is the import of internet imported both?
Yeah, can internet be treated as a medium?
Internet as a treated medium.
And as has been held by the Infotech judgment of Madras High Court in 2010, and also as it becomes a medium, then it can be treated as a good because it's through a tangible or intangible substance, as has been held by TCS.
See, basically the question is this. Let us assume that internet is a medium. What is internet basically? It is a broadband by which information is passing through. In those days we had a telecom, now it is a wire, it is now wireless. Let us assume that is a medium. And a software or a song or a movie or something, etc., is coming through that, downloaded directly into your computer. Now, let us assume for a moment that the software is dutiable according to TCS judgment. Let us also assume that the internet is the medium. Let us not get into an argument on that, because if I can succeed on a different point, why should I necessarily waste my time in arguing that you are right or wrong? Whatever be the position, if the custom have to charge custom duty on it, then they must follow all the sections which are mentioned in the Customs Act to demand duty from me. There must be filing a bill of entry, some examination of this, voluntarily, self-assessment or not, out of charge to be given, all those things we follow. If a transaction is such that is incapable of following any of the procedures of customs, the customs law procedure fails. If the collection machinery fails, the collection itself fails. Therefore, the levy fails. So therefore, without getting into an argument whether it is medium or not, I think we can easily succeed saying that. And apart from that, there exists a WTO ruling which says any information or software or any merchandise which can be communicated through the wire or wireless, custom duty will not be charged. that is still there. India is signatory for that particular resolution.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. So
Thank
one
you.
last question from Natarajan, sir.
Mm-hmm.
With your permission, sir.
Your pleasure.
Natarajan, sir.
Yeah. Now, am I audible?
Yes,
Of
yes.
course. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. It's like a Bahubali Part 1, where you
What
have
about
taken us through Bahubali Part 1, where
I
you have
see.
taken us through all issues, and finally the question is who killed why Katappa killed Bahubali. So there's an unanswered question of the Part 1, and we definitely want to have the answer for these vexed questions very soon in Part 2.
Okay.
But the
Okay.
road to Part 2 may not be so easy. So it may take several years, and it may in the process so many people may get killed and all that, and finally we'll also get the answer. And very soon we would like to have your answer why all these things and how to. But in that process of finding an answer to that vexed questions, there are various stakeholders. There are the parties, the importers. The government should be willing to find out a prominent answer. The court should be properly understanding this problem, and we lawyers have got a role. And how do you see the roadmap? Is it possible to get answer to these vexed questions in a short term, or how difficult it is going to be? I just wanted to hear from
I must tell you one thing. The role of the lawyer. See, let us assume for a moment that any amendment we made in Indian valuation rules can be done only when there is amendment to the GATT valuation rules. That can happen only when there is a next round of discussions apart from Uruguay round. A Doha round is going on, and we do not know how long will it take for the Doha round to conclude because it is totally jinxed. Given the scenario today, the US is now taking a tough position as far as the WTO itself is concerned because they are losing many cases. So I have very serious doubts regarding any amendment to the GATT valuation rules, which alone enable India to modify the rules according to this. Therefore, expecting the legislation to intervene and then solve the problem is out of question, at least not in the near future. But the existing provisions can be interpreted dynamically by the courts. And that is where lawyers play a very important role. We need to bring in and bring out to the inconsistency and impossibility of doing the business, and even the machinery provision with various provisions of the Customs Act will fail miserably if we adopt a system where the custom administration says, I want to charge the custom duty on the remaining portions also, or I would say unlocked portions. And I'm sure the courts will definitely listen. After all, Natarajan, today you and I are breathing fresh air because of what? We are able to enjoy the freedom of expression, the freedom of movement. Of course, I'm not talking about lockdown conditions. These things are possible because the Honorable Supreme Court dynamically interpreted the fundamental rights. What all they have done under Article 14, and who are responsible for doing this type of thing? Eminent lawyers. The lawyers have actually made the change. They made change the way in which we think. They change the way in which we live. And therefore, the contribution of lawyers to the development of the jurisprudence and the assistance given to the court. And courts are there to dynamically interpret the provisions and solve the problems. Therefore, I see the role of the lawyers more and more, and I see the role of judges more and more to fill the gap where the legislation lacks today as of now. So therefore, I am still an optimistic person.
Great, sir. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Natarajan, sir, for that question. It actually gives us a lot of inspiration to hear such words from a great lawyer like Lakshmi, sir, and inspiring juniors like us also to take up the profession in a very right way and work hard towards it. Thank you very much, sir, for your question.
Thank you very much, all of you. And I'm sorry for delaying your lunch. Enjoy
sir,
your lunch.
Yes, sir. So 1 minute, sir, with your permission, sir, Aparna ma'am wants to just come and tell him a few words, sir. Aparna ma'am.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Have you unmuted me? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, this is Aparna Nandakumar, advocate, sir,
Oh, thank
and
you.
one of your biggest fans, I should say.
Wow.
We all know how very busy you are, and in fact, in spite of that, you have taken so much time and effort to address the Madras tax bar. We have really enriched our knowledge database, has enriched exponentially after this session. It was a wonderful session, sir. Thank you very much, and please come back whenever you have time. Please address us once again. We would love to hear more from you. Thank you very much, sir.
Aparna, I was thinking that after hearing me, you'll put a ban for me to come and give a talk again.
No, sir.
It's a boring,
Absolutely not.
long-winded talk and also like a
No,
monologue.
sir. No, sir. We want to hear more and more. In fact, we're not even feeling hungry. We are hungry for your sessions, more sessions of yours.
I'm
Absolutely.
humbled. Thank you, Aparna.
Thank you.
I'm humbled.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you. God bless you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again, sir, for your valuable time and your valuable seminar, sir, today. And I thank all the participants who have joined us today. We had over 250 participants.